1, 2, 3. Harold and Brad. Windy City Filmmakers. Harold and Brad. Windy City Filmmakers. Harold and Brad. Da, 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 da.
Three, two, one. What's going on, y'all? Brad Stevens here for another edition of Harold and Brad, Windy City Filmmakers Podcast. HD, what's going on, brother?
He's Brad. I'm H. What's up?
Yes, we have a very special guest in the house. My good friend, the super talented actor, dancer, singer, Esteban Cruz is with us. What's going on?
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
I love the show.
You know, before we get into it, I was reading your IMDb page, Esteban, and I forgot all the shit you have. You have done a lot of stuff, my friend. That's what's up. Right.
My favorite was the very Harold and Bradford Christmas 3D spectacular.
Right.
Coming soon.
That's great. You know, so the first question we always ask people is a two-parter, and it's, what's your connection to Chicago, and what kind of art do you create?
Ooh, the big kahuna.
Yeah.
I'm connected to Chicago because I was born in Berwyn, Illinois.
Berwyn.
Bengali.
Yeah.
Bengali.
I was born in Berwyn at McNeil Hospital on Oak Park Avenue, and I grew up in Cicero, Illinois, which is the borderland between the suburbs and Chicago. So it always felt like one of those reindeer games where you couldn't go and play with the rest of the reindeer because your nose is too red, or it wasn't Latino enough, or it wasn't this enough, or city enough, or whatever. So and then we lived in Chicago at various times in my life, in Pilsen, in Little Italy on Oakley in 21st.
Nice.
And then as an adult, I lived in Pilsen and Uptown, and now in Archer Heights. That's our local South Side resident. And so I've always been a resident of the Chicagoland area.
Right.
Resident, yes.
And I always wanted to dance. And so I knew that I wanted to dance when I was 5, but our religion was actually football. So on Sunday, my dad is a Puerto Rican father. And he had 5 children, just 5 children at that point, that were all born with penises. So he was like, I have men. I have all these men.
Right.
Little did he know. And so every Sunday we would sit in front of my dad's lazy boy on the floor and watch from 10 a.m. to 10 at night every single game that you could imagine. And he would jump between every station to make sure he catches everything. And I remember at one point he happened upon PBS, and I was like, Dad, wait, go back. And he's like, what, the Broncos? I'm like, no, go. A production of Swan Lake.
Oh, man.
And I was like, Dad, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. And my dad was like, oh, no, mijo, you can't do that. Ballet is for faggots.
Oh, man.
It was forbidden my whole life to dance, and we all had to play sports. So we played t-ball in Stickney, Little League. And but my dad always had season tickets to the Cubs and the Bulls and the Bears. I never went to a Bears game, but I watched everyone on them. So this actually, crazily enough, did inform my art that I created, because since dancing was taboo, the one thing that I could always do was act. And so I started acting at 5 years old. At Oak Park Village Players. I was either ignorance or want. I don't remember. It was a Christmas Carol, and that was my start. That was my first gig. I worked for Candy, and that started it all. But I had always been acting or dancing some things that were acceptable, like salsa, merengue, performing in a show was always cool because my dad was a rock and roller and played guitar all over in Lincoln Park and where he grew up. So, so performing, if he could see himself in me that way, it was okay to perform as long as it wasn't ballet, really, basically is what it was. So I was, so I got a later start at dancing. I did Mexican folklorico, because my high school was very Mexican, Morton East and Cicero. And then I danced plena and bomba, Puerto Rican folk dance in college, as well as other Latin American folk dances, and got really into that. And then, and I was always studying, I started dancing professionally at 17. And this is where the Chicago and Cicero divide gets dicey. Because I was living in Cicero. I was going to school there. Though I had went to Benito Juarez at one time in Pilsen on Ashland. I was now living in Cicero, and there was a dance company back then called Joseph Holmes that had a chance to dance scholarship. And this is an African-American aesthetic. It's like, it was like the Ailey of the Midwest is basically what it was. And they had a chance to dance program where any city kid could audition and get a scholarship potentially to go and study at the school. And my parents were separated. I was 15 years old, and I begged my mom, please, can I go and dance now that you're separated from dad? And so she was like, sure, go. And so this woman, the receptionist at the school, she was like, yeah, sorry, no, it's only for Chicago students. You live in Cicero, you don't count. And I was like, oh, that's ugly. So I kept calling her back, and I called her back every day for 2 weeks.
Yes.
She finally broke, and she was like, fine, whatever, just come, but nothing's going to happen. And I was like, ha 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 ha. And I felt like I won. And I went, and I'd never taken a formal, like, classical dance training class before. I always wanted to, but I didn't know what a plie was. I didn't know any terminology. And we had to go through a ballet class. And I just like looked and stole and tried to copy everything I saw. I barely got through it. We won't look at that too much. And then we went into the modern section, and that was a little more user-friendly. And then I remember when Kevin Aiega Jeff, who was the new artistic director, he made us do a movement across the floor. And this is when Joseph Holmes was in the Fine Arts Building, I think. 410 South Michigan. Because I also studied opera on the 6th floor and danced on the 9th floor with Joseph Holmes.
Well, you sing as well.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. Aiega, he gave us a combination to go across the floor, and it was a jump that was leaping to the side and to the side, and our arms stretch out across our bodies. And he said, when you do this, I want you to imagine you're being a star and you're just shining. And I was like, I totally know what the fuck that is. I can totally be a star. And so I jumped and I shined, and I was like, yes, I'm a star. And then I got a full scholarship to the school. And then after 6 months of studying there, I got promoted to the second company and was dancing professionally at 17.
17.
Yeah.
You know what I love about that story? I love the persistence. And you're very much, I mean, straight up, did you call it every day? And you're very much a self-made dancer, right?
Yes.
I love that shit. I love that shit.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But I did, and then it was like, okay, great, you got in, and this is what I think about a lot with actors too, is like you work so hard to get the job, you work so hard to get into this thing, whatever the thing is, and how long you end up staying there is determined on how hard you work. Right. I used to think that it really was about how talented you were, but talent really isn't as important as not being an asshole and having a really good work ethic.
No doubt.
because talent is nice, but it's a varying degree. And some people are stupid talented. I am not one of those people. I'm super persistent. I'm super, I'm Larry Bird said, the harder I work, the luckier I become.
No doubt. Yeah.
And I feel that I really do feel that way. And I feel like Chicago sports, and having just watched the documentary, The Last Dance, and being a young brown person in the 90s and seeing a black man win like Michael Jordan did, totally changed my life. Totally like put the seed in my head that I could succeed. That I could be somebody, that I could be like Mike.
So how long did you train before you were all of a sudden a professional? You joined the second unit. Troop.
Yeah, so it was training for, because and it was intense. And that was part of what I also want to say about these arts organizations that serve Black and brown communities, like Joseph Holmes turned into Deeply Rooted, and that's what exists today. And we've been around for 25 years now.
Okay.
And that's really beautiful. And there are other places like Congo Square and Impact and Urban Theater, who've been dedicated to work in these communities and working with the communities that they're in. And like Carla Stillwell, a good friend of mine who runs the Carla Stillwell Institute, she has a very strong feeling that art is for healing. And I feel like I am an example of that, of how we in our communities take care of each other, take care of the children in our communities. They're all our children. And I that's how I was treated, and that's how I was tended to and watered and loved and given sunshine. And I was a star.
What makes Chicago such a great theater town, in your view?
Well, I think a lot has to do with economics and how prolific this city is with all of the different kinds of theater that is done here. You can put up a show for $200, in Chicago. Right. That can be done.
True. Yeah.
And it's when you're given those kinds of variables where you've got limited time, limited space, limited money, limited resources, you have to get creative. And so it pushes you as an artist to be imaginative and creative, which I think in a lot of successful theater that we see, it's lost some imagination and some creativity because they've got something that works. Like the most commercially viable theater there is, musical theater. I enjoy musical theater. I'm not knocking it, but it is the most commercially successful theater there is out there because it's a product that we know you've got a social contract with the audience of you're going to come in and get this. And when you leave, you'll be humming these tunes. Although, I feel like modern musicals are a little less like that. I tend to like more oldie timey musicals myself. I like the Rodgers and the Hammersteins, and I like Bye Bye Birdie, and I like more jazz, which is another part of my connection to the city and art. Because I did study opera, and I studied it in high school with Richard Berthold, who's passed since now for some time. And he was a Wagnerian tenor. And so he taught me actually sweeter things than what he sang. I sang Schubert and Schumann, which was like not as crazy as Wagner. Wagner is crazy. But Schumann is a little more tender. Now, what's that?
Now, you keep talking about this. I have to, if you want, here's just, please bless us with something. Anything.
Okay, I'll stew on it, and then towards the end of the interview, I'll give you a little.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Let me sip my tea.
Water here, yeah.
So the jazz in this city, I studied opera, then I went to college and I studied actually jazz. I studied romantic music first, romantic and classical, and then I fell in love with jazz when my grandmother passed away. And she was at Casa Central, which is a senior living facility for independent seniors who have their own little apartments. You know, it was really cute.
Right.
I remember after she passed, my cousin handed me a tape of Billie Holiday and a bunch of people on it. And I'd only listened to Billie Holiday in high school because my girlfriend, Margie Ruiz, she gave me a tape of Billie Holiday. So I knew Billie, but he had Sarah Vaughan on this tape that he made me, my cousin Joey.
Yeah.
Sarah Vaughan, oh my God. She cracked something open in me because at one point, depending on where you were sitting on the sides of your existence, she was either greeting the gates of heaven or spiraling you down the depths of hell.
Right.
She could do that with her voice and with her musicianship and her rhythmic gymnastics. She was insane. So I fell in love with her as a musician and then her instrument. And my voice was very similar to Billy Eckstine's voice.
Right.
And so her and Billy were like siblings basically. And so Sarah Vaughan was my life for several years.
Nice.
And I consumed everything I could, just like I did when I was a kid. I was in Cicero in the basement, and I had my own little private area where I'd take my little boom box and all the songs I recorded on B96 and GCI. Because I would tape my favorite songs because I didn't, you didn't buy an album. You could tape that off the radio. So with the commercials and everything, I would put my lips up to the speaker and I would inhale the spirit of Whitney Houston.
Nice.
I would inhale the spirit of Taylor Dayton. I would lip sync every single utterance and breath that they did so that my lips were right there taking in their air. And at one point, our souls became one.
Ooh la la. Yeah.